Hello everyone, welcome to animation log 2 of my animated series over here on YouTube. My name is Valkorey and I'm a digital artist who is currently creating a fully 2D animated show in an anime-like style. In this log video, I will share my process of starting the series from scratch and take you through most of my preparations to get started, as well as show you a little bit of my workflow. I'll try to cover as much of my planning as possible, but please remember that creating an animated series on your own takes a lot of hard work and determination. I did not get into this thinking it would be a finished project after only a couple of months, or even just a year. At first I hesitated to get started and had a lot of doubts and worries that prevented me from taking the leap to create the animated series Valkorey. Creating my animated series is so much more than just coming up with a story and animating it. At first, I wrote a short version of the animated show. There was no specific dialogue, and not every single character was included in the first draft, and it was by no means a good and compelling story, but rather an early foundation. From that point, I started brainstorming what kind of story I actually wanted to tell, and why. The series is about a wolf character who arises from the dead in search of a mysterious paradise to call her home. I determined early on where the story would take place and wrote down the most important objectives for the main character. I only added extra characters, such as her childhood friends, if they actually served a purpose. I find it important that characters, especially the main ones, have their own unique personality and motives. Since the series has 10 episodes of around 15 minutes each, I prioritized showing character development and unique personalities that complement the story, instead of adding extra side characters that were forgettable due to them not having enough screen time. I stayed away from having a villain or some form of greater evil, and chose to focus more on the actual journey, which is a mystery to both the viewer and the main character, who has lost all her memories since her resurrection. Even though writing a good villain can be fun, I also feel like it's done quite often. I would personally like to introduce obstacles for our main character in a different way, even if it means that she herself will sometimes become her own antagonist. This leaves room for wonder and the unexpected, which I tend to enjoy when reading or watching a story. People often ask me how I do not burn out, and even though I have a couple of methods to prevent this as much as possible, I know it can still happen to me. During my years as a full-time artist working in a studio, I've had my fair share of projects with challenging deadlines. I learned to recognize whenever I would get tired, or if a specific task would take up a lot of my mental energy. Even though I absolutely adore working on my own series, I knew that I would still have to face draining tasks. Everything is done by hand, and even though I have a couple of people helping me out on the side, I'm still artistically involved in every single step, which is a challenge, but one I learned to embrace by simply adjusting my workflow in a way that suits me best. Dividing the story into a set number of episodes allowed me to have a clear overview and ensure that every minute of animation supports the story at all times. I would sometimes remove any unnecessary content and replace it with story elements that matter. Having the entire season planned out also allowed me to check if the pacing was too fast and insert a moment of rest. It can be nice to give the audience and the characters a moment to breathe, something that's very iconic in the movie Spirited Away. I wrote the most important pieces of dialogue as I was developing the story, so they would not get lost. Conversations about specific topics are also mentioned in every single episode, but not always fully written out. The final script per episode is made in combination with the storyboards and later put up for final revision before being translated into Japanese. After that, it's checked by another Japanese translator, and lastly, given to the Japanese voice actors along with the storyboards, notes, and, if available, cut previews or even finished cuts. Aside from coming up with the story, I also took the time to do necessary research in order to stay consistent and organized. I cannot name a single commercial project I've worked on that did not include a research phase, something not everyone tends to think about when they are off creating their own projects. It was important to pick a specific animation style for the series and collect reference material based on what I actually wanted to include. I had to adjust my personal art style and changed some of the original character designs to make them easier to animate. I do not like cutting corners, but I knew that I had to make several creative decisions that would speed up the animation process while also preserving the quality and actual animation. I always admired the details in anime characters, particularly in their hair, eyes, and shadows. I found a balance between the amount of hair and fur strands a wolf character could have. I did the same for the level of detail in the eyes. Here is where I cut down on the details the most compared to modern anime. I know that the more detail I added, the longer it would take to animate a single episode. For example, by eliminating hair highlights, I would save time per cut. It might look like a small difference, but when you consider 200 unique cuts, saving around 10 minutes per cut, you end up saving over 33 hours. I chose to spend these extra hours that I saved on something else within the animation. This way, I could determine a style I was happy with in terms of quality and detail, but also one that is doable. Before locking in the style of the animated show, I collected several images and video clips from existing anime. I often look at this collection while animating or painting backgrounds. Having a carefully selected reference board helps me to stay consistent and might solve some visual problems I run into as I'm drawing, especially since the animated show is not 100% based on my own art style. I find it very helpful to have these images available. I knew from the start that I really wanted the backgrounds to have a Studio Ghibli type of look to them, so I narrowed my search from standard anime backgrounds to Studio Ghibli backgrounds as reference material. I also made a color script for the background so I could stay consistent with the different shades. Another color script was made for the characters, line art, shadows, and eye highlights. When animating, I took inspiration from previous experiences in the art industry and set up an easy-to-follow workflow. I made custom templates, brushes, settings, and style guides for every single step the animated series goes through. Much of the process is directly inspired by the anime industry workflow and adjusted to fit a very small team or just a single person like me. In order to track my process, I've planned out different sprints, which consist of a set number of cuts within a scene. Instead of moving from cut 1 to 2 to 3 and 4, I select a couple of storyboards, plan the cuts, and give them either a low, medium, or high priority. The priority is often based on the difficulty of the cut. In a studio, this wouldn't really matter too much, but as a single animator, I like to have a balance between difficult cuts and the easier ones, so I do not burn out, or I'm able to select one based on the time I have that day. Taking the extra time to plan the cuts gives me a clear overview of what is actually finished. When taking on a big project like this one, I really tend to value structure. By planning like this, I always know what I have to do and can even select the task based on my time and energy. Earlier in this video, I said that I hesitated to make my own animated series. I know there are many people like me out there, and in the past couple of months, I have met so many wonderful artists. Many of them shared their own insecurities that kept them from starting or finishing their animated projects or stories. So, what I'm about to say is to all of you. I still have these insecurities regarding my animated projects, and they are not going anywhere. I can manage them, but they are never truly gone. Starting an animated series like this is no easy task, or else anyone would do it. I did not go into this expecting to write the very best story YouTube has ever seen, and I will never treat it as such. However, I am always aiming to make it as best as I can. Some people will probably love it, and some won't. Even though I would love to write a story and animate a series everyone's going to like, I know that it would simply be impossible. I hesitated for so long because I felt like I was not good enough yet, but after working as a full-time artist for almost 3 years without any breaks, I've come to realize that you will always find something about your own work that you want to improve. Sure, people might criticize the art or writing in my series, but in the end, I am making the series because I genuinely like the process. So instead of trying to always find what pleases other people, try to prioritize your own wishes first. Out of everyone that exists on this planet, there will always be someone who hates what you make, but there will also always be someone who loves your work. So instead of worrying about what others think, just make it for yourself. And if you are intimidated to finally take on a big dream project because it will be a lot of work and seems like an impossible job, then just try to forget about that dream. If you can't forget about it, however, you might as well just get started, since it will be stuck in your mind forever anyway. I would rather just start to work on it now than torment myself for another 5 years by just thinking about what could have been. It does not have to be finished in a month if it's your dream project. The animated show Valkorey actually has a published roadmap over on our website, where you can see our current content plan for 2024. We are still on track and so eager to share the first sneak peek this upcoming summer. If you would like to see previews and behind the scenes content of creating the animated show, you can check out the Patreon. All of the earnings go towards the team and the show. So far, you guys have made such a big impact. So if you want to get more involved with the animated series, feel free to check it out. The link is in the comments and the description below. Thank you so much for watching again, and I will see you in the next vlog video. Bye!